The Baylor Bears now have a foolproof way of getting into the college football playoff. Let's get Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and The Cam Show on YouTube, Rogue Media Sports Network. I appreciate you guys making this your first listen today and every day. Heading up, that's not a phrase. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to talk about Baylor's new in the CFP committee. Thank you, Mack Rhoades. Plus, we'll take a look at the awards being given out already for some of the basketball teams at Baylor and where the women could fall in this NCAA tournament. Plus, we will recap last night's game, crucial game between Baylor and TCU. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. First things first. College Football Playoff Committee has a new committee chair. And no, he or she does not come from the Big Ten. He or she does not come from the SEC. He or she is the voice of the silent majority. It's a he. It's Mack Rhoades. He's the athletic director at Baylor. And now he is the head of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Well done. Bravo. The Big 12 gets absolutely screwed last year. I don't know about absolutely, but they probably, looking back on it, should have had a second team in there. And now, no such mistake will happen again. If the Big 12 deserves to have two teams in there, you best believe our guy at the top, Mack Rhoades, is going to make sure there are two Big 12 teams in there. Now, Mack has been a part of this for a couple of years, and we actually had him on the Matt Mosley show towards the tail end of the 24 season, and loved bending his ear just talking about this process. You know, it's obviously it was brand new this time with 12 teams, but still, like, we're 10 years into this thing, we're still wrestling on what is the criteria, what are the criteria that gets these teams into the college football playoff, whether it's 4 or 12 or 14 or 16, whatever's coming down the pike here. Like, what is it? Is it the best teams? Is it the most battle-tested teams? Is it, the teams that come from the best conferences? Do we ignore the ones who don't come from the best conferences? And this is every single year, this is what it is. And for a lot of this time, it's been SEC and Big Ten people towards the top of this mountain, leading this beast. And now we have a Big 12 guy, and best yet for all of us, it's a Baylor guy. Isn't that funny that this year that Baylor should be challenging for the college football playoff? My opinion will probably change, but I can't just sit here and say on March 5th that, yeah, they're going to the college football playoff. It's a disappointment if they don't. But I look at a team in this Baylor team that if you make the Big 12 championship game, if you're a top 2 team in this conference, you have a real shot at a 12-team college football playoff. I think that was the case this year. Obviously, Iowa State was the runner-up, but I think BYU had a real shout at the college football playoff. They ended up winning 11 games. Iowa State did too. Iowa State had that shout, right? Like that was a good football team there, top to bottom. And no matter what they've said over the last couple of years, certainly, and Mack has said this, that they don't look at the conference affiliation. They look at the schedule only in a certain lens and yada, yada. Like, we all know that. We know the score. I was happy that SMU got in last year over Alabama because they deserve to. But we know how often that doesn't go the same way, right? And we know that with potential automatic qualifiers coming up, it's not going to do anything good for the ACC, the Big 12, and the Group of 5. This is not going to. And so there's the cynic in me that is saying this is the CFP's way of appeasing, the Big 12 and the ACC. Well, what are you going to do to us? So what? They put a 4-loss Alabama team in the 12-team playoff. It's one of your guys at the top. Your guy is the foreman of the jury. That's the cynic in me. The optimist in me, and the one who really likes Mack Rhoades, by the way, is the one thinking they're saying, we've got a prominent voice at the table. We've got a guy who's not only a Big 12 guy, silent majority, little brother kind of conference guy, but he's also the AD of a small, religious, private school within the smaller conference. Like, you want to talk about afterthoughts from the college football playoff committee and the big wigs in the SEC and the Big Ten. Baylor is right up there for afterthoughts. That sounds oxymoronic, but they're one of the top afterthoughts. That's where Mack helps out. That's where Mack can't help but help out. Like, just giving a voice to the voiceless here. And by the way, I think this is a great reminder that Mack Rhoades is a damn good athletic director. I know a lot of Baylor fans have gone away from that notion the last couple of years. And I also kind of understand why, but this is a reminder. Like, Mack Rhoades is a good athletics director and has been AD of the year a couple of times. Like, this guy can do it. And, people were mad that he let Kim Mulkey walk and they didn't know the whole story. People were mad that he stuck with Dave Aranda last year. I was upset he stuck with Dave Aranda last year. He took a huge risk. And so far, so good. So far, it's worked. That risk has paid off and hopefully will continue to pay off in the future. Right? There was a bit of a gamble in putting as much money into men's basketball as they did early on in his tenure. They won a national championship. And that got a brand new basketball arena right next to campus. That's an absolute jewel and should be a great home court advantage for you for years to come. Like, Mack Rhoades has a big part in all of that. And I think he hired the right baseball guy too. I really do. And I think the questions are gone from Nikki Collin to some extent, right? Like, she's not Kim Mulkey. And there are still some people who are living in that space and will never get outside that. And that's whatever. That's their prerogative. It's their life. But as I've talked about on this show several times the last few weeks, and we're getting kind of off topic here, but it goes back to Mack Rhoades. Like, it's not easy replacing a Hall of Famer. And they've done that in a pretty good position. You look at these places that don't recover. Old Dominion from the 80s. Louisiana Tech, Kim Mulkey's alma mater, never recovered. Tennessee, Pat Summitt, never recovered. Baylor women's basketball has kind of recovered. They've not went to a Final Four or won a national championship yet, but they're certainly a team that has looked like a threat to do that. So shout out to Mack Rhoades for giving us a voice on the inside. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Will this actually help Baylor? Will this help the Big 12? I think it has to. I think it definitely will help the Big 12. At least by just changing the way this committee looks at it a little bit. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Locked On Baylor rolls on. We are going to talk about women's basketball, a little bit of men's basketball too. The awards are rolling in. And how far can Nikki Collins' team go? Maybe they do get to that Final Four. Fingers crossed. That's coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But first, a word from our newest sponsor. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. It's called Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest production info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, and it's delivered fast from coast to coast. You need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. Novel idea. And for the trade pros looking for that extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5, Supply House, and the number 5 for 5% off your order. That's supplyhouse.com. Regular season over for women's basketball. Regular season coming to an end for men's basketball. The awards are rolling in for the ladies. We're looking at the tournament for the ladies. We're going to do that in a minute because an important men's basketball note in terms of the awards as they go out, Baylor is well represented, and really it's VJ Edgecombe that's out there representing, as he was named a Jerry West Award finalist. Now that goes to the shooting guard of the year, the West Award, shooting guard of the year, lest we confuse it with point guard of the year or just guard of the year. No way. VJ Edgecombe is one. He is third in the last 5 seasons for Baylor, which I read it and got surprised, but I shouldn't be, because the other two were Adam Flagler and Macio Teague, who absolutely deserve that. Macio Teague is one of the great underrated players of all time for Baylor, and certainly of his time at Baylor. He was a very underrated player, and I think Adam Flagler was probably the same way. And I'm sorry, this is mean, but I love in these press releases when, Jerry West Award, West Player of the Year, whatever, named after the class of 1980 Hall of Famer and 1959 MOP of the Final Four, Jerry West. Oh yeah, Jerry West, Hall of Famer. Yeah, we know who Jerry West is. Fantastic player, the late, great Jerry West. Here are the other finalists for it. Caleb Love of Arizona, who has beaten Baylor twice this year. Memphis's PJ Haggerty. Chaz Lanier of Tennessee. You remember him. I know you remember him. And speaking of guys you remember who burned Baylor a little bit, Lanier did it on the court. This guy did it off the court. That would be UT's Trey Johnson. How about that, by the way? Like, Trey Johnson looked like he was in a Baylor uniform. He, at one point, was the top player in his class. And it just looked like nailed on. His dad played at Baylor. It looked like that's where he was going to go. It was going to be the best recruit in Baylor history. And then he says no. He about faces, he goes to UT. And what they get instead was a guy who ended up being a higher rated player in the 24 class. That's it, 24, at the end of their careers. And he comes in and is still Baylor's highest recruited player ever. And they're both finalists for shooting guard of the year in college basketball, Trey Johnson and VJ Edgecombe. I mean, you got, honestly, Lanier has had a really good season. And we've seen Love twice. He hasn't played great against Baylor. I haven't seen Haggerty play at all. I can't tell you anything about him. And Trey Johnson's had a really good year. But honestly, I think VJ's got just as good a shot as any of them to win that thing. And it's not a value award, but certainly if we saw value awards like VJ, what he means to this team is pretty incredible. 15 points a game, 5.5 rebounds, over 3 assists. Going to be a top 5 pick in the draft. Trey Johnson will be right up there as well. I don't know if it's his to lose, but he has certainly impressed the nation. And the people that vote on these things, they love highlight reel dunks, maybe even more so than the stats. And VJ will give that to you. He will give you the highlight reel. They might just be replaying that dunk over Mark Few's kid when they were down by 45 points. And just say, here it is. Here's your guy. I'll take it. Women's basketball. Their awards are starting to roll in, postseason awards, because the regular season is done. And please excuse me while I look at the phone, because there are plenty to go over here. Okay? We have got, from the women's basketball team, Aaronette Vonleh, transferring from Colorado, second team All Big 12. Jada Walker, honorable mention. I get it. I get why she's honorable mention, but she's got to be a super valuable honorable mention. Like this is kind of like a Macio Teague thing. Jada Walker is one of my favorite players on this team. She might not always be there when you call, but she's always on time. Is that Ashanti who says that? J-Lo? It's with Ja Rule. Anyway, Jada Walker has always stepped up in big games when they need her. Always. Dariana Little-Page Bugs. You think they missed her on Sunday? Certainly. All Big 12 first team. Sarah Andrews makes the second team. They technically don't play the same position. I think Jada Walker is a better player than Sarah Andrews. I think they should just go 2 guards in the backcourt rather than point guard, shooting guard. Anyway, Bella Fauntleroy, all defensive team, an honorable mention for the Big 12 team. So when I read all this a few hours before recording this, I went through kind of what I just went through there. I was like, Jada Walker, honorable mention. Damn, I feel like she should have been an all Big 12 player. Bella Fauntleroy. I don't know the conference as widespread as I do with men's basketball. I'll be totally honest with you. But Bella Fauntleroy, for all I've watched this year, I'm like, that's a Big 12, all Big 12 player. And again, putting the value aspect into this, she's such a valuable player for Baylor, averaging 10 and 6. She can play inside, play outside. She's clearly one of the best defenders in the conference. You can see that in the eye test and makes the all-defensive team. Like, that one I was like, really? Like, find me whatever, 10 players, 15 players in this league better than Bella Fauntleroy? I struggle to find that. But hey, this is you won't even necessarily see it in the stats. Like, that's just those of us who watch the games. You see how much of an impact that Bella and Dariana Little-Page Bugs have on the game for Baylor. You just see that a lot. Anyway, that's the postseason awards. And now we look to see where they're going to play and who they're going to play in the NCAA tournament, because everything broke their way over the weekend except their own game against TCU. Top 16 teams were losing. It looked like that Baylor was going to sneak in there. They were 17 going into that game, which they hadn't moved up yet because of the win over Kansas State. And then, of course, they lose to TCU. But they're probably just right on the outside looking in for that top 16 seed and playing home games at the Foster Pavilion in the NCAA tournament. I think that would be such a huge advantage for them. And I know this seems weird coming off, them losing a championship game at home in front of a great crowd on Sunday. But we saw it and heard it with Kim's teams for so long, them saying that's just such a load off our shoulders to be able to play the first 2 rounds at home. And they did that every year, like every single year, that it was just such a good way to ease into the tournament if there is such a thing. Right. And I think that would help this team a lot because there would be some great crowds there. And Baylor's desperate for some good high-level playoff basketball, as you saw from the fans on Sunday. We're not getting it with men's basketball this year. So I think that would be a huge kind of boost. We know this team can go on the road and win. They did it against Virginia Tech in the tournament last year when their best player was out. But I just think this would be really beneficial for them to have a raucous home crowd there and kind of be able to put behind them the disappointment of that TCU game. And I mean, who knows? Maybe they win the Big 12 tournament. But if they come away without a conference championship in either the regular season or the conference tournament, I think that would be a huge help to play at home and kind of flush those things down and be like, you know what? It's anyone's game now. Like anyone, it doesn't matter how many championships you've won this year at this point. Anybody can beat anybody, and we've got it at home. Like I think that would be a huge, huge lift for Baylor. But as they showed you last year, they can go on the road in the tournament and win. So I guess we got to deal with the Big 12 tournament first. Whatever. At Baylor, we care about the NCAAs way more than the Big 12s on the men's or the women's side. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below about where they could go, how important it would be for them to be at home, and how far can this team go? Because that's something we're going to be monitoring the next few days. I want to know what you guys think. Coming up, let's recap that game last night. Baylor and TCU in a vital one from Fort Worth. Let's do it next on Locked On Baylor. Whew, it was not pretty. It was not pretty, but I'm happy to be sitting here and I'm happy to be breaking down a Baylor victory by the most classic of score lines. Some fans would say TCU's favorite score to lose by, 61-58. The Bears get the win in Fort Worth, and if it were that straightforward, my God, I would have a lot more hair on my head and a lot longer fingernails. But it was not that straightforward. Baylor, for a good chunk of that game, was well in control and was honestly playing one of their best games of the season, I thought. Which, does this sound familiar? Kind of sounds like the game they played against TCU at the Foster Pavilion in January. That one they lost. This one they almost lost, but they did not. They hold on, 61-58. They're up 56-45 with 7.5 minutes left. Let's think about this. They're up 56-45 with 7.5 minutes left. And with 2 seconds left, it was 58-58. There's still lots of problems with this team. That was still not a great basketball game. It was played by two teams who were not very good. But you needed to win, and you won. You needed to beat Oklahoma State and TCU in that order, and they did. And, yeah, with those free throws at the end of the game and a silly, silly foul by TCU, I think Baylor saved their tournament chances. They needed to win both those games. They did. Now, whatever happens against Houston happens. Whatever happens in the Big 12 tournament happens. We'll see with bracketology what Lenardi puts out later this week. But right now, I think Baylor's a tournament team. They have been most of the year. I was skeptical of it at points. But hey, if that's what it's going to be, and they needed to beat TCU, they went out and beat TCU. Simple as that. I can live with that. Tip of the cap to Norchad Omier. The guy that friend of the show, Pete Souza, thinks is the most underrated player on the planet, he said. I don't know if I'd go that far because we've seen some bad decisions by Norchad this year. But can't say he doesn't always leave it out on the floor. And in this game last night against TCU, he did both. He played really hard. Well, all three. Played really hard, played really smart, and played really well. That's a good trifecta right there. He gets another double-double, 19 and 12. That's great. Right in a vacuum, that's fantastic. And you win the game on the road. But even better, you remember what I was saying last time? The last post game against TCU? The men's one, not the women's one I did on Sunday. I was like really taking it to Norchad Omier because Ernest Uday did the same thing. He owned him in that game. Like just it was like a JV fringe starter Norchad Omier against the best player on varsity in Ernest Uday. I think he had 16 and 16 in that game. Just absolutely bullied him in Waco. Where was Ernest Uday tonight? You would not be blamed if you didn't think Ernest Uday played in this game for TCU. He did. Plays a stretch. He took one shot in 30 minutes. One shot. And it was an alley-oop dunk on a breakaway, on a 2-on-1 fast break. That's it. He didn't even get a shot up when Norchad Omier was guarding him. 2 points, 8 rebounds. Norchad goes for 19 and 12. Norchad didn't win it by himself, but he more or less did on the defensive end. There are not many threats on this TCU team. Lord knows that, and we all know that. There's really not a lot of offensive threats. But the guy who kicked your butt last time took one shot in 30 minutes. And Posey, James Posey's son, who's gone off on a couple of games this year. Like if he got hot, TCU can make the tournament here. One shot. Only played 18 minutes. Reynolds, their best scorer, he gets 16. He needed 15 shots to get there. 15 field goals, actually. Needed to take 20 shots to get there. And was 3 of 10 from 3. So defensively, it was a good effort, albeit against a team that's very challenged offensively. But Baylor needed to go in and win those 2 games in a row, and they did. Can't hold it against them. Wouldn't dare hold it against them. That was a win you needed to have, and you went and got it. So far, so good right now. Baylor's in the NCAA tournament. We'll obviously keep an eye out for that all week long. We'll get you ready for this Houston game on Saturday. And, once we get into Monday's show, we're going to be looking at Big 12 tournament, a Baylor basketball favorite. We'll be looking at that, who they're playing. We know where they're playing and when they will be playing as well. Let me know what you guys thought about this game. Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton. I want to thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. Special thank you to those of you who watched the post game last night as well. We had a great crowd for that. So appreciate the heck out of you guys for everything you do for this channel. I know it's still a bit of a sleepy time of year, so I really appreciate those of you who are making it your first listen today and every day. And we will see you tomorrow on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.